So going into this summer activity season, so basically out of the snow in Tahoe, different sort of footwear is going to start coming in, and as we start doing more activities outside, you have to decide and figure out what works best for you. So when it comes to shoes and footwear, so the unfortunate easy answer is it depends. Everyone's a little different, but there are a few guidelines to kind of look at, things to kind of focus on depending on what activities you're doing or type of foot that you have. So first one, we'll go into just general anatomy. So this would be a picture of the foot. So inside, there we go. So two big things you want to look at, one of which would be kind of the balls of the feet right through there. So that would be considered the last. Sometimes companies will have a pretty narrow last, some are wider. Depending on how wide your foot is kind of the direction you'll need to look at with shoes in general. Second one is right through there. So that's the medial arch, so your arch support type stuff. So everyone's a little different in how big that arch is, and just as a good rule, the misconception that kind of gets out there is that, oh, I need good arch support, and so I need to buy a shoe with a high arch. That's not always the case. Depending on the activity, as well as depending on your anatomy, that can easily make things very bad for you. So yeah, if you have a high arch, we want to lean towards those shoes that have that support. If you don't, we'll answer a couple more questions here, but those are two big ones to kind of address right off the bat of, all right, this is how you work and how we can make it work for you. Okay, so I brought in a couple pairs of shoes. These are most of them are pretty worn. So first one, something like that. So this is it's a very flat shoe, your type skate shoe. So one of the things that this does really well, is standing around. So if you're standing flat-footed, you're not really walking around a lot. These do really well because that splaying of the foot allows you to balance a lot better. So is this going to support me for standing on my feet all day? Not necessarily. But this is something when it comes to balance and support, or balance, I'll say, a little better. This does really well because it's really flat and it's a wide foot. So it allows my foot to kind of spread out so I can evenly distribute that. Sometimes with someone, again, with a high arch, this would be a horrible choice, because you can actually sprain some of those ligaments on the inside of that arch because it flattens so far, and that's clearly not comfortable. So one option for typically standing around activity, a flatter shoe, flatter base tends to do a little bit better, versus going into something more like this. So this is more of a kind of running athletic shoe. So one factor that's different here is there's a lot more cushion in the back versus in the front. So your foot is a little bit in that position versus the other one is really level. So this one would do better, and I mean this one they advertise as a running shoe because you want to be in that little bit curve in the foot as it comes off, which makes a more, when your foot steps off, it's going to be a little bit more rigid, gives a little bit more support in that sort of running activity. So if you're doing a lot of walking, running, something like this would do really well. And again, this is just me personally. I don't have a huge arch. Mine's pretty kind of right in the middle, average. So there's not a lot of arch support in this, and this does really well for me. But again, that's different for everyone else. Another one, so this would be like a hiking shoe. So same story. So this one's built a little bit more for walking. So again, that heel is a little bit more raised because when you step, and there's a little bit more cushion there, so when you step, it's not going to shoot all that pressure up into the knee and hip as much. It's going to absorb it a little bit more here. But I mean, without going too far into it, it just puts pressure somewhere else. So it's not necessarily good or bad depending on what we're looking at. So, but again, going into why would I choose something like this? So there's still going to be some support here. It's still not a huge amount of support, but there is some of that arch support, because these are not super well for, if I were to just stand around, they don't have as big a balance. There's some, Hoka's an easy example of, you see their base is gigantic, and it's trying to kind of combine that. All right, I can build a shoe that has a lot of base and support, which is a little bit flatter, but then make it pretty rigid to where it's a good to kind of keep you walking, because you want to be able to have that a little bit of rigidity, because as you push off, that's what's needed, versus I'm not jumping and just landing flat on these very often, or just standing. So a couple different options there. I mean, like I said, it definitely is not something that I can give you the easy answer. One example I always like to share, though, is one study that was done with military. So everyone has the same shoes, but everyone's different. And they had 3 different groups. One group, they didn't give any sort of insoles to. Another group, they gave them a really expensive insole. And then the third group, they let them choose which is most comfortable. And not to our surprise, is the people who chose what they wanted, what felt right, did the best. So not saying that expensive one is always the best option. It can be, but not always. So find a shoe that fits well. Make sure it gives you the support that you're doing. And then, again, think of the activities that you're doing with that as well when it comes to, if I want a little bit more support and rigidity, so it's going to, or not rigidity, so in the sense of a running shoe, I want it to be able to give me some bounce right off the front kind of thing. So as I move, it kind of makes you feel like you want to keep moving, versus those flatter, like a Converse skate shoe type thing. Those are really good for kind of standing around, because they're really good at balance, because it allows your foot to open up. So a couple things to think about, but there's a lot of factors when it comes to footwear. By no means am I touching on all those, but those are some of the big ones I'll throw out there, because it can make a huge difference if you're in the wrong shoe. Or the other one is, are you just in a shoe that's too old? It was a good shoe and now it's not, just need to replace it. Those kind of things can change a whole lot of factors and keep you moving, or not, make things hurt actually pretty bad. So if you make mistakes there. So hopefully that helps. I'm Dr. Darren Howarth with Summit to Shore Chiropractic. If you have more questions about footwear, feet in general, let me know. We'll see you soon. Good luck out there with some of those new activities, and we'll see you soon. Have a good day.